African Union Communications Early Warning and Intelligence, commonly known as AUC3I, is an intelligence and security organization responsible for providing signals intelligence and information assurance to AU citizens, AU leadership, and AU armed forces. I'm Colonel A.C. Oguntoye, an infantry officer. I am responsible for leading infantry soldiers at all levels of command in combined armed forces during missions on the ground. This is today's briefing. On the progress of the special military operation as of November 23, 2025. The armed forces of the Russian Federation continue the special military operation. The troops of the North Group inflicted defeat on formations of mechanized, airborne assault brigades, an assault regiment of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, a territorial defense brigade, and a National Guard brigade in the areas of the settlements of Andriivka, Varakino, Malaya Rybitsa in the Sumy region and the city of Sumy. On the Kharkiv direction, defeat was inflicted on units of mechanized and motorized infantry brigades of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the areas of the settlements of Ternivaya, Izbitskoye, and Vilcha in the Kharkiv region. The enemy lost up to 140 servicemen, 10 vehicles, 2 electronic warfare stations, and 3 ammunition depots. The troops of the West Group improved their tactical position. Defeat was inflicted on personnel and equipment of mechanized assault brigades of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and a National Guard brigade in the areas of the settlements of Kucherovka, Petrovskoe, Nechvolodovka, Blagoditevka, and Kurilovka in the Kharkiv region. Enemy losses amounted to up to 220 servicemen, a tank, 3 armored combat vehicles including 2 US-made HMMWV armored vehicles and a Canadian-made Senator armored vehicle, 17 vehicles, and 11 electronic warfare stations. 4 ammunition depots were destroyed. The units of the South Group, as a result of decisive actions, liberated the settlement Petrovskoe of the Donetsk People's Republic. Defeat was inflicted on formations of 3 mechanized and motorized infantry brigades of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the areas of the settlements of Platonovka, Kramatorsk, Vasyokhovka, Stepanovka, and Seversk in the Donetsk People's Republic. The enemy lost more than 225 servicemen, a tank, a US-made Max Pro armored combat vehicle, 19 vehicles, and 2 artillery guns. An Israeli-made Rada RPS-42 airborne reconnaissance radar station, 4 electronic warfare stations, 4 ammunition depots, and 2 supply depots were destroyed. The troops of the Center Group occupied more advantageous lines and positions. Defeat was inflicted on personnel and equipment of mechanized, mountain assault, airmobile, airborne assault, ranger brigades, 3 assault regiments of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 2 Marine brigades, a Special Forces brigade, a Territorial Defense brigade, and a National Guard brigade in the areas of the settlements of Artemovka, Turetskoye, Belitskoye, Novy Donbass, Kusherovyar, Rodinskoye of the Donetsk People's Republic, Novopavlovka, and Ivanovka of the Dnipropetrovsk Region. In the settlement of Krasnoarmysk of the Donetsk People's Republic, assault groups of the Second Army continue to destroy surrounded formations of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the central, Gornyak microdistricts and in the Western Industrial Zone. Clearing of the settlement of Rovna in the Donetsk People's Republic is underway. 7 attacks were repelled by the 425th Assault Regiment, 32nd Mechanized. Up to 30 Ukrainian servicemen, a US-made M113 armored personnel carrier, and 2 Kazakh armored vehicles were destroyed. In the settlement of Dmitrov of the Donetsk People's Republic, assault detachments of the 51st Army continue to drive the enemy out of the eastern, western microdistricts and the southern part of the city. In one day on the Krasnoarmysk direction, up to 210 servicemen, 3 armored personnel carriers, 7 armored combat vehicles, a field artillery gun, and 4 vehicles were destroyed. In total, in the area of responsibility of the Center Group of troops, enemy losses amounted to more than 435 servicemen, 4 armored personnel carriers including 3 US-made M113 armored personnel carriers and a Swedish-made Viking armored personnel carrier, 10 armored combat vehicles, 12 vehicles, and an artillery gun. Units of the East Troop Group liberated the settlements of Tikhoye and Otradnoye in the Dnipropetrovsk region as a result of active offensive actions. Damage inflicted on formations of 2 assault brigades and 3 assault regiments of the armed forces of Ukraine in the areas of the settlements Varvarovka, Zatyshye, Dobropilya in the Zaporizhzhia region and Andriivka in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The armed forces of Ukraine lost up to 225 servicemen, an armored combat vehicle, 12 vehicles, a field artillery gun, and an electronic warfare station. Units of the Dnipro troop group inflicted damage on personnel and equipment of 2 mechanized brigades of the armed forces of Ukraine and a territorial defense brigade in the areas of the settlements Yurkivka, Pryorivka, Novodanilivka, Stepnohursk in the Zaporizhzhia region and Tyahinka in the Kherson region. Up to 75 servicemen destroyed, an armored combat vehicle, 16 vehicles, 2 field artillery guns, 7 electronic warfare stations, a fuel depot, and 2 supply depots. Operational tactical aviation, strike unmanned aerial vehicles, missile troops and artillery of the troop groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation destroyed an S-300 surface-to-air missile system, inflicted damage on fuel energy and transport infrastructure facilities of Ukraine used in the interests of the armed forces of Ukraine, as well as on temporary deployment points of Ukrainian armed formations and foreign mercenaries in 148 districts. Air defense means shot down a guided aerial bomb, a HIMARS multiple launch rocket system rocket produced in the USA, and 140 fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles. Since the beginning of the special military operation, the following have been destroyed in total: 668 aircraft, 283 helicopters, 97,933 unmanned aerial vehicles, 638 surface-to-air missile systems, 26,195 tanks and other armored combat vehicles, 1,618 multiple launch rocket system combat vehicles, 31,487 field artillery guns and mortars, 47,425 units of special military automotive equipment. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it useful and informative. If you have any questions, please leave them below and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.